Drake recently filed not one, but 2 lawsuits against UMG, and the reactions and responses have been absolutely hilarious. In this video, I want to talk not only about the lawsuit and people's reactions, but how in this case, multiple things can be true at once. This is a situation of right message, wrong messenger, but because of likability and the role that it plays in so many situations, likability can really influence how people regard what you're saying, even when what you're saying and what you're doing is absolutely correct. We have all been there before, and y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. So without further ado, let's get into it. Aloha, beautiful humans. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back if we've been locked in. My name is Sasha, and today we are talking about likability, right message, wrong messenger in the context of Drake's lawsuits against UMG. You may notice my change of scenery. I'm hanging out with my in-laws this weekend, so the decor, the vibe is a little different. It's giving cottagecore, and it's so comfy here. Drake recently launched 2 lawsuits against UMG in a span of 2 days. I don't even think 24 hours passed between the first lawsuit being filed and the second lawsuit being filed. But in the first lawsuit that Drake filed against UMG, he was basically alleging that they paid Spotify and iHeartRadio to inflate the streaming numbers for Not Like Us. And listen, Not Like Us was the song of the year. Like, Kendrick snapped on that. In case you have no idea what this stems from, basically a very brief history, because it's a long history going back to, I think it was either 2011 or 2012 when Kendrick dropped the Control song, and in a verse he called out Drake, J. Cole, Big Crit, you know, a lot of his contemporary rappers saying that he was basically coming for their head, and Drake took that as a diss. Now, was it a diss? Absolutely. However, it was a diss in the context of a lot of his peers took it as a compliment to even be named as someone he highly regards, highly respects, and feels that he is their competition. So most of the people called out in that verse, they just, you know, kind of took it on the chin, and they were like, oh, okay, I see you, Kendrick, okay. Everybody kind of took it that way except for Drake. Drake took it really personally. So since then, they've been taking shots at each other, and the beef exploded over the summer. They were taking shots at each other, dropping song after song. I was so tired that weekend. I said, Kendrick, enough. I need to sleep. Please stop dropping music, please. So it was just a really good rap beef, probably the best rap beef we've had in a very, 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 very long time. And Not Like Us was just, not only was it a diss song, it just resonated with so many people. He called out Drake. Like, Kendrick really called Drake to the carpet and completely decimated him. When the music video dropped, it was just, oh my goodness, it was a production. It was so LA. Like, I'm not even from LA, but I was like, dang, I'm trying to be from LA now. Like, it was such a great music video. It was like, it was really for the culture, and Drake has kind of spiraled since then. And with this lawsuit, Drake is basically alleging that the streaming numbers for Not Like Us were inflated. And I don't really know about that, because I know personally, I listened to that song at least 1,000 times. Not just on Spotify, but across Apple Music. And I know my riders at SoulCycle are sick of it, because I played that song in at least one of my classes at least once a week. So I don't know about other people. Like, people's responses have been so hilarious, because people have been like, I'm responsible for at least 1 million streams of that song. But Drake is basically alleging that UMG inflated the numbers. Now, in the second lawsuit against UMG, Drake alleged that the contents of the song, calling him a predator, calling him a PDF, those were defamatory statements. And by promoting the song and allowing it on streaming platforms, basically they were spreading defamation about him. Now, the curious thing about that to me is that if these statements were defamatory, why aren't you suing Kendrick Lamar? Wouldn't it make sense? Like, if you're gonna sue UMG saying that they're spreading defamatory and inflammatory content about you, why wouldn't you go straight to the source and sue them? It's definitely very interesting to me, and it tells me that if these claims, these alleged claims, allegedly, let me get on my Jessie Woo, allegedly, she has a better voice than me, so just pretend that allegedly. And what it tells me is that if these claims are allegedly true, that Kendrick would have to produce receipts, and maybe Drake does not want those receipts to come out. But that's anybody's guess. I will be very curious to see if he ends up suing Kendrick Lamar, which would be the most which would be the most Karen thing to do in a rap beef. Like, I saw this meme, it was like Drake is taking this to HR, Drake is taking the rap beef that he started to HR. And I have been laughing at the memes, I've been laughing at the videos, the skits have been absolutely hilarious. I know Drake's therapist is like balling. Her Christmas, his or her, their Christmas season is about to be lit if they celebrate Christmas, because I know Drake has been, therapy is not cheap. And in that vein, this is kind of a random tangent, kind of an aside, but I personally believe that therapy should absolutely be free for everyone. The government is trying to control certain things, then y'all need to governmentally mandate free therapy for everybody, because we are living in very trying times. And I imagine one of your coworkers or peers dropping diss songs about you back to back to back. And it becomes the most streamed songs of it becomes one of the most streamed songs of the year. Yeah, I would need therapy for that. I would need therapy. So as much as like we're gagging and laughing at Drake, like obviously this is, it can definitely impact someone's mental health, and people are like, Drake is spiraling. And in the event that he is, I really don't blame him. I would be spiraling too. Like, hello. And if we look at it from a completely different vein, not even in the vein of his mental health, but Drake has been at the top of the rap food chain for at least the past 10 years. Like, Drake is, when you think about a quintessential rapper, when you think he is the highest paid, highest streamed rapper of our generation, well, people will say it's like Eminem. So I want to say kind of like this, I guess, decade. If we're talking about the 2020s and to even the 2010s, Drake has been one of the top performing, the top selling, the top streamed rappers of his time. And so when you have worked and reached such a high position, I think it can kind of be a shock when all of a sudden you are knocked off the top. And not only are you knocked off the top, but everybody seemingly is co-signing your demise. Everybody is clapping to it. There's a dance diss song to it that is the highest streamed song of 2024, that's highest streamed hip hop song of 2024. At least it's on track to be the highest streamed hip hop song, Not Like Us, of 2024. And people are dancing to it. And it's just like, I can absolutely believe Drake is shocked by all of this. And in a way, him suing to say that these numbers are inflated, it really does show his disbelief at the fact that so many people really don't like him. And it may not necessarily be that so many people don't like him, because I personally believe that if Drake dropped a summer, Drake is good for a lot of things. Well, Drake is good for one thing. If it's one thing good Drake is good for, it is a summer banger. So I personally believe that if he had came out and gave us a song of the summer, it kind of would have went away. Maybe not necessarily went away, but I think that he would have stood a fighting chance. But he kept on dropping just songs that weren't hitting in response to the beef, and then he just disappeared. And every time he pops up, like recently he popped up on this stream, he had the streamer change a song that was playing. It was the Weeknd song, and he was like, oh no, we don't listen to that, we got to change it. He's like, that's not real Toronto, that's not real Dot. And it's like, okay, that's not like so I think just his responses, if he had dropped a summer banger, I think that it wouldn't have been so, his loss wouldn't have been so palpable. It wouldn't have been so palpable. Yeah, I think his disbelief that the song could have resonated with and been enjoyed by so many people really goes to show how out of touch Drake is. And we are increasingly living in a time of authenticity. People, it is this backlash, it is this reaction to aesthetic lifestyles and highly curated images and people at the top. We've been really seeing this push against cultural appropriation, diversity, equity, inclusion, representation. We've been seeing more of a push for that. And what I think was so poignant about Not Like Us, not only did it have so many one-liners, but it called Drake out as a colonizer. And in a way, he is. He is Canadian. He is not American. There have been arguments made about how Drake is really a huge cultural appropriator. You know, you got Dominican Drake, you got Jamaican Drake. I think Drake's next identity is going to be Ethiopian. Mark my words, you've heard it here, you know, because he's been talking about Habesha girls and East African girls forever. I'm surprised he hasn't made a romp into appropriating Ethiopian culture. But if and when he does have another personality that comes to the forefront, I think it will absolutely be Ethiopian Drake, and he'll be like, my name is not Drake, it's Ahmed. Like, I'm just saying, mark my words, mark my words. Next Drake we're gonna see is gonna be Ethiopian Drake. But anyways, so you know, Drake was called out for being Drake was called out for being inauthentic. He was called out for being a cultural appropriator. Being that we are living in a climate where people value authenticity now more than ever and are really intentional about uplifting and supporting the real instead of the pretenders, not like us, directly took aim at what Drake represents. And Kendrick said it himself, I'm what the culture's feeling. The culture is not feeling Drake anymore, and Drake has been having a very difficult time coping, and these lawsuits, I think, are just the final nail in the coffin. Like, Drake is never beating the Karen allegations, like never. Not only is he not beating the Karen allegations, it really goes to show that, again, you're not like us, because who would sue over a rap beef? Who would take a rap beef to HR? A colonizer, a Karen. Like, that is exactly who would take a rap beef to HR. Drake has overstayed his space and overinflated his importance in a space that he benefited from because of his privilege. And not only his privilege, but his likability. And that likability, however, is no longer working in his favor. And this is where I come to the point that multiple things can be true at once. Because yes, I want to talk about likability, and overall that's what this video was about. But this is one of those really interesting situations where it is right message, wrong messenger. And not just right message, wrong messenger, but it also calls out how hypocritical this lawsuit is coming from Drake. Now, is it wrong if UMG inflated the numbers, which some music industry content creators, I've seen a lot of people who are familiar with the industry and industry practices, some TikTokers, they have come out to say that yes, UMG did inflate these numbers. Spotify did inflate these numbers. There is pay to play going on. There is payola going on. This is common industry practice. I've seen a lot of people offer that perspective, and it is just very interesting to me that if this is true, is it wrong? Absolutely, it's wrong. And I can understand Drake's frustration. However, what makes the claim that UMG was overinflating the song so interesting, and again, very hypocritical, is that Drake easily benefited from the same thing. So it's like, why all of a sudden are you having a change of heart? If and when it benefited you, you didn't have anything to say about it, but all of a sudden it's not benefiting you and you want to file not one, but two lawsuits. This is, again, a case of right message, wrong messenger. Many people have pointed out that when Scorpion dropped, it was heavily pushed by Spotify. He was on the cover of a disproportionate amount of Spotify playlist covers that had absolutely nothing to do with the genre he was in. Like, him being on the cover of a fresh gospel playlist was absolutely crazy. Like, I would take Kanye West being on a cover of a fresh gospel playlist on Spotify because Kanye West does do gospel music, but Drake, there is nothing gospel about the music that he performs. So, and it's funny because I distinctly remember this at 2018 when that album dropped. I was making my playlist over on Spotify, and literally Drake was everywhere. You could not get away from him. It almost reminded me of the time when y'all remember iPhone, like early iPhone adopters. Y'all remember when U2 dropped that album and without any of our consent, Apple put it on all of our devices and you could not delete it? Like, that pissed me off because I was like, I don't even really listen to U2 and their music is not bad, but I should absolutely have a say in what is being put on my phone that I pay for, on my phone that I pay for, and taking up space. And I could not afford the phone with more memory and storage. So I'm sitting here trying to delete pictures, trying to delete apps, but I could just delete this album that I didn't listen to. Like, oh my God, that was a crazy time. It's very hypocritical of Drake to now be complaining about this very common industry practice only because it no longer benefits him. He didn't stand up and say anything about it before because it was working out in his favor, but now he's complaining for selfish reasons. This lawsuit is not for altruistic purposes and to shine a light on the industry to make it a more equitable and fair place for smaller artists. That's not what he's doing. It's coming from his very selfish place, and I think that's very off-putting to people, because if he shines this light on what UMG is doing, and UMG and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all of its subsidiaries are forced to be more transparent about how these streaming numbers are calculated, it is something that would benefit smaller artists and independent artists. So again, right message. Should things be equitable? Should they be fair to everybody in the music industry, to all recording artists? Absolutely. Is this a practice? Is this something that in the long run could benefit artists? Absolutely. However, that's not the intention behind this lawsuit. And while intention will never be more important than impact, this is one of those situations where because of likability, your intention does matter, especially with Drake, because this lawsuit is so hypocritical. You know, the worst type of person, or one of the worst type of people, is that they'll be silent and they won't have any problem when something is working out in their favor, but as soon as it no longer benefits them, that's when they want to go to HR. That's when they want to make us think about things. That's what they want to complain. That's when they want to complain. And I cannot stand that quality about people. And again, we are living in the age of Aquarius, transparency, a return to the authentic, and people are picking up on that. And it's really had an impact on how Drake has been viewed, and he is no longer a very likable person, which is crazy, because if 10 years ago you would have told me that we would have gotten to this place where being Drake is regarded as such, I would have told you were a liar. I would have had to see it to believe it, because Drake was very well liked. He was like the industry darling and the industry sweetheart. And did he somewhat benefit from light skin privilege? Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting to me that rap is one of those genres and spaces that was started and created within the Black community. However, Eminem came along and became the top performing, top selling, alleged best rapper of all time, which please. But Eminem came along, and then all of a sudden Drake came along, and Drake is not even American. He is Canadian. So it's like, this is a genre that both Eminem, both Drake have come into and benefited from the work of Black Americans, but they are receiving more of the praise and more of the spotlight because they don't look, because they benefit from Eminem white privilege and Drake light skin privilege. So it's very interesting to me now that, and I personally love it, that we are now in a time where people are no longer allowed to come into your space, or we're more critical about people coming into certain spaces as interlopers and putting them on this pedestal. Like, no more invites to the cookout. No, you cannot come just because you can hold a solid two-step. Like, immediately no. No more invites to the cookout are revoked. Thanks, no thanks. You cannot come. You cannot come. Likability is definitely playing a role in how he is being received and people's responses and reactions to this lawsuit. It is common industry standard and practice. Payola is an industry thing. So let's just operate with the understanding that for the rest of this video, that what Drake is alleging they did is true. It has not only been done for Drake, it has also been done for several artists. For example, Travis Scott and Taylor Swift, hugely. It's absolutely wrong, and it's really unfair. And this is the case in so many industries. There's no such thing as meritocracy, and we've been gaslit as a society into thinking that, oh, you just show up and you're talented and that will be enough. But time and time again, we see that it's not just what you know, but it's who you know, it's the connections you have, it's how much money you have. And we don't only see this in the music industry, you also see this in so many different career fields and industries, even sports. I would say sports is the one last space where it's absolutely talent based. But even take, for example, basketball. You know, a lot of basketball programs, you would see this raw talent, but now it's very much, if you can afford to pay, you know, AAU and go to the best schools, if you can afford those things, you have a better chance of getting into the league. You have a better chance of being successful in comparison to the kids who have the raw talent, but they may not have the access and the resources to join AAU leagues or go to the better schools that are better teams and that will put them in front of more recruiters. So it's really like there are no more industries, there are no more spaces where it's simply a matter of raw talent, but it was really, if you have a talent agency behind you, just like we saw with the whole controversy over the Sephora squad. And Any Given Sunday, if you're not following her, you definitely should give her a follow, because she was a part of the Sephora squad and she just did a really good video about how it may not necessarily be pay to play, and it may not necessarily be that if you had, you know, a talent agency on your side, you're definitely going to get in, but it does help. You know, she did a really good video on that. So it seems like there is no space. There's no single space where meritocracy is real, that your talent is going to get you in the door. And imagine how frustrating it must be for smaller artists, for independent artists, for indie artists who are putting in all this time and effort, and they have the raw talent, but they're not getting the same promotion because they are not backed by a big machine. They're not backed by a huge record label. You know, it really sucks. And I think that's what people are rallying against, and why so many people not like us resonated. Kendrick's authenticity resonated. That's what people are pushing for. That's what people want to see now more than ever, in a time where it is so obvious and it is so apparent that it's not what you know. It is not your talent, but it is definitely how much money you have and the connections you have. And it's not fair. And we are no longer being gaslit as a society into blindly accepting this and believing it, especially with all of the Nepo babies, you know, in our faces. And, you know, in Hollywood, especially, you see this happening with this case of Nepo babies and so many actresses and actors that are getting their break. Again, it's not a matter of raw talent, but again, whose dad is a filmmaker, whose dad is a well-known actor. We see that now more than ever in every single industry. You cannot escape it. And people are pissed off about it and are no longer condoning it or supporting it. I think people would have definitely responded and reacted differently if it had come from any other artist, you know, especially a smaller artist that had been grinding. You know, people are constantly rooting for the underdog. Drake is not an underdog. He has I think, was it a $400 million deal with UMG? And people were saying that he was suing them to get out of his contract. I actually really don't think that's the case. I think he's just really upset and cannot handle the fact that he is no longer what people are feeling. But Drake is neither an underdog. He is not somebody that people aren't rooting for. And if, again, this lawsuit would have come from somebody who was an underdog, people would have reacted differently to it. However, Drake has been an industry sweetheart for a very long time and has absolutely benefited from play to pay schemes and being pushed in front of people's faces. I think the timing of the lawsuit definitely has an impact on how people are regarding him, responding to him, the reactions to the lawsuit, because it happened 3 days after Kendrick dropped GNX. And if you have not listened to that album yet, it is so good. It is such a good album. But people are like, really? Like, he drops this album and this is when you're gonna drop the lawsuit? Do I think that the timing of this lawsuit, he did it intentionally after Kendrick dropped the GNX album? Honestly, no. Lawsuits are things, especially a lawsuit of this magnitude. It took months for his legal team to gather all of this information and put together a cohesive document that they could present in the form of a lawsuit. So I don't think he was necessarily like, Kendrick dropped after 3 days, and after 3 days, I'm gonna rise like Jesus from the cross and drop this lawsuit on him. I don't think that was necessarily Drake's intention, but again, intention will never be more important than impact, and the impact of him dropping this lawsuit 3 days after Kendrick drops GNX, which is on track to be the most streamed, the highest streamed, the quickest streaming album, hip hop rap album of 2024. It looks suspect, and Drake is never beating those Karen allegations. Like, it's not gonna happen. You know, the timing of it makes everything look 10 times worse, and it is safe to say the beef is over and Drake lost. And this is just where we are. You know, the entire thing makes him look like a sore loser, somebody who cannot accept that they are no longer the industry sweetheart. And on top of that, it makes him look worse considering he was the person who started it in the first place. Because like I said, the Control verse, it was a diss, but Kendrick was not only taking shots at Drake, he was taking shots at everybody. And it just so happened that Drake was the only one who really internalized it the way he did. And from that point was taking all of these digs at Kendrick. And then they started throwing shots at each other back and forth. And so when it comes to likability, not being liked can really have a lot of impacts on your outcomes in so many environments. We have seen it in so many industries where not being likable can really work against you, not just in the public eye, not just in Hollywood, not just in the music industry, but think about yourself or even someone you work with or somebody you know that's on your team, how well they are received and how that has a role or an impact on how they're treated or the opportunities that they receive or even you yourself receive. You know, if you're not a likable person, people are less willing to go to bat for you. They're less willing to help you out. You know, it's a part of the halo effect as well. And people aren't really going to speak out or care if something is happening to somebody who's not well liked or being mistreated, even though it is an objectively bad thing that is happening to that person. People are less likely to care if they don't like someone. Like, think about the personality hire at your job, for example. They may not be particularly good at what they do and they have no talent for the job, but because they're fun and they're easy to be around and people like them, they get away with so much. I had a recent somebody that I worked with a while ago. He thought he was the personality hire and he thought that he could get away with not doing his job, but he overestimated his likability and was released shortly afterwards, because it would be one thing if he was really good at his job, but he was not good at his job, was not a well-liked person, and he was quickly released from his employment. Whereas there are people that I have also worked with that are maybe not the best at what they do and could use a lot more training and support, and even with additional training and support, they're still not very good at what they do. People are more willing to work with them or give them grace because they are very likable. So being likable in a work environment, in a professional environment, can really impact whether you stay in that space and how you are received in that space, especially if you are someone who is beautiful or attractive and you benefit from the halo effect. And I think if Drake were still a likable artist, I think that people would absolutely be responding to this lawsuit differently, especially since the information in this lawsuit making a case that there is payola going on, that there is pay to play going on, which UMG and iHeartRadio, they haven't responded to it, but they will have to eventually defend this lawsuit. And so it could come out that yes, this is actually true. Pay to play is happening. If the lawsuit doesn't get dismissed, UMG will have to provide discovery to refute these claims. And I'd really be honest, I'd honestly be very interested to see what the outcome and what the fallout of this lawsuit will be. Because payola is not something that is new. It is just suing someone in the context of payola in a rap beef looks very bad. You are HRing a rap beef, and that's objectively not rap. It is not hip hop. In the words of Dina, that's what makes it hip hop. Lawsuits do not make it hip hop. We talk about likability. Self-awareness is also very interesting to me, and I always wonder if some people just do not know how they come off to other people and how they're being received by others. In a way, how Drake has responded to this beef, it really makes me think that, and not just how Drake has responded to this beef, but how industry people have responded to this beef. Because very curiously, a lot of people, even though Kendrick is very authentic, it really seems that Drake, a lot of rappers and commentators, you know, academics who people are alleging is where Drake got this inside information from, either Drake or J. Cole, which if it's J. Cole, please don't let it be true, because J. Cole is probably inarguably one of my favorite rappers. Like if I'm talking about my top three, it's Wale, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar. So hopefully J. Cole was not in on this, but when you think about Drake's peers and contemporaries, it seems like a lot of them are really riding for him and rocking for him. It seems like he's surrounded by kind of yes men, and he probably was really unaware, and it took him aback that so many people did not like him, or maybe not necessarily so many people did not like him, but how many people were rooting for Kendrick Lamar and agreed with what Kendrick was saying about Drake. And it makes me wonder if he is surrounded by not only if he's surrounded by yes men, but also his level of self-awareness, because there are some people who have very little to no self-awareness. So likability is not even like, you know, likability also has an impact, but do these people even know how they're coming off to people, whether they are coming off in a likable manner or whether they are unlikable, is just very interesting to me. Like my coworker, he struck me as someone who was lacking in self-awareness and could not pick up on the fact, or did not care to pick up on the fact, that he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way and nobody really liked him. Let me not say nobody really liked him. It was a very professional environment. So I believe that in a professional environment, whether somebody likes you or not, it shouldn't matter. You should be able to do your job. When if it involves working with them, that's what you should be able to do in the context of your job. Whether you like them or not does not matter. But he was such a difficult person to work with that I think more than anything that impacted how people felt about him, and ultimately why he was eventually let go. Not just the fact that he was unlikable, but that he was also very difficult to work with and just didn't do his job. But anyway, so let me bring it back to Drake. It was just making me think, because Drake, in order to even launch this type of lawsuit and believe that not as many people listened to Not Like Us and people really didn't like that song, either he didn't see the responses to it across social media and even the pop-out concert. He really cannot believe so many people do not like him. I think it goes to show, again, how out of touch he is with what is happening in this cultural lexicon, in this cultural moment that we are in. Kendrick Lamar is not an underdog by any means. He is backed by a record label. He is backed by UMG, so he's not an underdog. He is a well-regarded and Pulitzer Prize winning artist who is well-regarded in his field, very well-respected, and backed by large entities. He's not an underdog by any means. He does, however, represent something that is increasingly lacking in the music industry, which is not only lacking in the music industry, but in highly visible spaces such as on the social media space, within the space of content creators and influencers, and also in Hollywood, highly visible spaces, in sports even. He represents a level of authenticity that is missing in so many of these spaces amongst people who are highly recognized and highly visible. When you think about your favorite content creator or influencer, not only do they, yes, benefit from likability, and they are people that most people would regard as benign or very likable, but also they seem nice, they seem kind, they seem like very authentic people. And again, in the music industry and on social media, where people are constantly pushing very curated images that seem fake and out of touch and unrelatable, Kendrick Lamar seems very relatable. He seems very in touch. He seems very clued in as to what is happening within the world around him, and speaks about it in a way that is not coming from ego, in a way that is relatable, and in a way that connects with people. And it's not necessarily just because of the music that he makes, because I think it's very easy to label him a conscious or a woke rapper, but he does make music for the club. He makes music you want to twerk to. He also makes music about family, friendship, love, struggle. You know, he makes music that is very relatable to people, whereas Drake has kind of fallen away from that and has made, and I won't even say fallen away from that, he has just gotten older, but his music has not grown or elevated with his age. Drake is nearly 40 years old. I think both Kendrick and Drake are the same age, but Kendrick is making multi-dimensional, multifaceted music, whereas Drake is still talking about the same things he was talking about in 2014, 2015, even though he has 10 years of life and experience under his belt. You know, he's a father. Let's hear music about that. Like, he hasn't grown with his audience, whereas Kendrick Lamar has grown with his audience. And that right there, he's rapping about things that are relatable to the average person. He has that level of authenticity and is able to connect with his core, with his fan base, in a way Drake is not able to. And I don't really think that's important to Drake, you know? And that also is kind of what makes him unlikable and out of touch, that he is going to live this kind of flashy, flossy lifestyle and throw it in your face in a time where a lot of people are struggling, the cost of living is high, and Kendrick is talking about his family, he's talking about his friends, he's talking about being a father, he's talking about his journey. You know, that Drake is just, you have to be aware of what's going on in your fan base, in the lives of your audience, and that is just as important in the music making and the creative process. If you are not only making music for your fans, but also you are making music that comes from your heart, your experiences. That's what you're singing to. The same way people make content that is interesting them, it is inspiring to them, it is talking about what they're going through. However, you are making that for an audience, and you have to be aware of what your audience is seeking and what your audience is wanting and what they are going through and what is happening in their lives. And in a way, I feel like Kendrick is very tapped in a way that Kendrick is not. And that in part is what is able to drive Kendrick's authenticity and make him a likable person in a way that Drake is not. And that authenticity is going to win every single time. And so to wrap this up, this lawsuit is very interesting to me. These lawsuits are very interesting to me. People's responses and reactions have been absolutely hilarious. I'm personally very interested to see what the findings are from it. Not the second lawsuit, the whole defamation. I don't really care about that personally. I think that if that is true, Drake should be suing Kendrick Lamar, not UMG. However, the first lawsuit, the pay to play, I would definitely be interested to see what the results are from that, because if it's happening, it's not fair and it's not right. And I think most people would agree. However, because it is Drake bringing this to the forefront in response to a song that was dissing him, that was regarded by so many people and streamed millions of times, the optics of it don't look good. Again, intention versus impact. The impact of this lawsuit will be very interesting to see, and the implications, but the intent behind it is flawed, is shady, it's coming from a place of ego, and it's just very like loser kind of behavior. And in a time where in order to succeed in any space, it increasingly feels like it's not only about what you know, but who you know, your connections, nepotism, money, etc. It feels nice to hold on to this sense of meritocracy, authenticity, and talent coming out on top. It is essentially what Kendrick Lamar and what Drake represent, essentially, is that existential battle between the real and the fake. And right now, Drake is losing, even though the lawsuit may have teeth, the first lawsuit anyway, even though it may have teeth, he is losing because he comes off as very fake and inauthentic, whereas Kendrick Lamar comes off as very authentic and very likable. So those are my thoughts. Drop down in the comments. Let me know if you disagree with everything that I'm saying, or if you agree. What are your thoughts on the lawsuit? What do you think the fallout is going to be? Do you think that the second lawsuit, that will be thrown out, or that Drake will end up eventually suing Kendrick Lamar? Let me know your thoughts. Drop down into the comments. Do not forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace out.